What happens when someone says something so devastating that even Dr. Phil, after 25 years and thousands of stories, completely freezes? Stop the tape. Stop everything right now. His voice cut through the studio like a knife. The cameras kept rolling, but everyone knew something unprecedented was happening. Sarah sat in the guest chair, clutching a white envelope, her hands shaking so violently the paper rattled. What she was about to reveal would change everything Dr. Phil thought he knew about this case. It had started as a routine family dispute episode. Sarah Mitchell, 34, had come to the show because her mother, Linda, was convinced Sarah's husband was hiding something. "I just know something's wrong," Linda had insisted during pre-interviews. "A mother knows." The producers thought it was another in-law conflict. Standard Dr. Phil material. They were wrong. When Sarah walked onto the stage that Tuesday morning, she looked like any other guest dealing with family stress. Tired eyes, forced smile, professional outfit chosen to look put together for national television. Dr. Phil greeted her warmly, as he always did, and settled into his chair. "Sarah, your mother says she's concerned about your marriage. Tell me what's going on." Sarah's answer was practiced, rehearsed. "Dr. Phil, my mom is overreacting. Every marriage has its challenges, but we're working through them." But Dr. Phil had been doing this too long not to notice the micro-expressions, the way her left hand kept touching her wedding ring, the barely perceptible tremor in her voice. "Sarah, I'm going to ask you something, and I need you to be straight with me." Dr. Phil leaned forward. "Are you safe in your home?" The question hung in the air. The studio audience went quiet. Sarah opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Yes. I'm safe." "That's not what I asked?" Dr. Phil's voice was gentle but firm. "I asked if you are safe. Present tense." Sarah's composure cracked, just slightly. A single tear rolled down her cheek. "Can we take a break?" she whispered. Dr. Phil made a decision that would change the entire trajectory of the show. "No." His voice was steady. "Sarah, whatever you need to say, you can say it right here. You're safe here. I promise you that." Linda, watching from backstage on a monitor, felt her stomach drop. She'd known. A mother always knows. Sarah reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out the white envelope. It was worn at the edges, as if she'd been carrying it for weeks, maybe months. Her hands were shaking so badly that Dr. Phil stood up and walked over to her. "What's in the envelope, Sarah?" "The truth," she whispered. "The truth I've been too afraid to tell anyone." The studio was so quiet you could hear the cameras humming. Dr. Phil knelt down beside her chair, something he rarely did, and spoke directly to her, his voice low enough that the microphones barely picked it up. "You don't have to be afraid anymore. Whatever it is, we're going to handle it together." Sarah looked at him, really looked at him, and in that moment she made a choice. "My husband didn't hide something from me," she said, her voice gaining strength. "I hid something from everyone. For 3 years." Dr. Phil straightened up slowly. "What did you hide, Sarah?" She opened the envelope with trembling fingers and pulled out a single piece of paper. "Medical records. From a hospital 2 states away. From the night I thought I was going to die. Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead." The audience gasped. Linda, backstage, started crying before she even knew why. Dr. Phil took the paper from Sarah's hands and read it quickly, his expression shifting from concern to something deeper, a profound sadness mixed with immediate protective instinct. He looked up at the control booth and made a cutting motion across his throat. "Stop the tape. Everyone out. Clear the studio except essential personnel." The audience began to murmur in confusion. This had never happened before. Production assistants scrambled. The director's voice came through someone's earpiece. "Dr. Phil, we're live. We can't just..." "I said clear the studio. Now." His voice left no room for argument. Within 90 seconds, the audience was being ushered out. Cameras were powered down except for one. Dr. Phil turned to that remaining camera and spoke directly to it, to the viewers at home, to the producers, to anyone watching. What we're dealing with here is a survivor. And survivors don't get exploited for television ratings. Not on my show. The studio went completely silent. This was no longer a TV show. This was a rescue operation. Sarah was sobbing now, 3 years of held-in pain finally breaking through. Dr. Phil sat down beside her, not in his host chair, but right next to her, as close as a friend would sit. Sarah, I need you to listen to me very carefully. You are not alone anymore. Do you understand? You are not alone. She nodded, unable to speak. The medical records show injuries consistent with severe domestic violence. Fractured ribs, contusions, defensive wounds. The hospital notes indicate you told them you fell downstairs. He paused. Sarah, you didn't fall downstairs, did you? No. The word was barely audible. How long has it been going on? 5 years. But that night he almost killed me. I drove 2 states away so no one would know. So his family wouldn't know. So my family wouldn't know. I was too ashamed. Linda burst through the backstage door and ran onto the set. No one stopped her. She grabbed her daughter and held her, both of them crying, and Dr. Phil stepped back to give them space. Off camera, Dr. Phil made a choice no producer expected. He pulled out his phone and made a call right there, in the middle of the paused show. Those close enough heard him say, "This is Dr. Phil McGraw. I need immediate consultation for a DV survivor." "Yes, I'll hold." He turned to his production team. "Get me a private room. Get her mother in there with her. And get me the best trauma counselor within a 50-mile radius. I don't care what it costs." A production assistant started to object about show format and broadcast obligations. Dr. Phil cut him off with a look that could freeze fire. "I don't care about the show format. I care about that woman right there. Figure out the broadcast part later." But what happened next is something no one in the room, or watching at home, saw coming. Sarah's husband, who had been waiting in a green room for his segment, heard the commotion and tried to come onto the set. Security stopped him at the door. Dr. Phil walked over to him with the kind of controlled anger that's more frightening than shouting. "You need to leave this building. Right now. And if you're smart, you'll contact a lawyer, because I'm personally making sure every relevant authority sees those medical records." The husband tried to protest, to explain, to minimize. Dr. Phil held up one hand. "I've been doing this for 25 years. I've seen every kind of manipulation, every kind of excuse. I'm not interested in your story. Your wife's injuries tell me everything I need to know." Security escorted him out. Dr. Phil returned to Sarah and Linda, who were still holding each other in the middle of the stage. "Sarah, here's what's going to happen. We're going to get you somewhere safe. We're going to get you connected with counselors who specialize in trauma and domestic violence. And we're going to make sure you have legal support. All of that starts today. Right now." Sarah looked up at him with red, swollen eyes. "Why are you doing this?" "Because 25 years ago, I promised myself something. I promised that if I ever had a platform, I would use it to help people who couldn't help themselves. You came here asking for help, even if you didn't realize it. I'm not going to let you leave here without it." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card, his personal card, something he gave to maybe 5 people a year. He pressed it into her hand. "This is my direct number. Not the show's number. Mine. If you need anything, and I mean anything, you call that number. Day or night. Do you understand?" Sarah clutched the card like a lifeline. "I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. You already did the hardest part. You told the truth." The impact of that moment would ripple far beyond that studio. When the episode eventually aired, heavily edited, with Sarah's permission, and with follow-up footage showing her in a safe location, it became one of the most watched episodes in Dr. Phil history. But more importantly, it became a catalyst. The National Domestic Violence Hotline reported a 340% increase in calls the week after it aired. Women who had been silent for years found the courage to speak up. Abusers who thought they were untouchable realized their victims had more support than they knew. Sarah, with Dr. Phil's support and resources, filed for divorce and obtained a restraining order. She moved across the country, started therapy, and slowly rebuilt her life. 6 months later, she returned to the show for a follow-up. She walked onto that same stage, but this time she stood tall. No trembling hands. No forced smile. Real strength. Dr. Phil, you saved my life that day. Not just physically. I might have ended up as another statistic. But you saved my spirit. You showed me that asking for help isn't weakness. It's the bravest thing you can do. The audience gave her a standing ovation. Linda, sitting in the front row, was crying again, but this time from joy and relief. Dr. Phil stood up and hugged her, and in that moment, everyone in the studio understood what his show was really about. It wasn't about entertainment, or ratings or viral moments. It was about the sacred trust between someone who's hurting and someone who has the power to help. Share and subscribe. Make sure this story is never forgotten. After the cameras stopped rolling that day, Dr. Phil spent another hour with Sarah and Linda in a private room, personally introducing them to the counselors and advocates who would be part of Sarah's support network. He made sure they had every resource, every phone number, every contact they could possibly need. A production assistant later said she'd never seen him like that, completely focused on one person's well-being, everything else secondary. That white envelope Sarah had carried for so long? Dr. Phil kept a copy in his office. Not as a trophy, but as a reminder of why he does what he does. On difficult days, when he questions whether his work matters, he looks at it and remembers Sarah's face when she finally told the truth. Years later, Dr. Phil would say that moment changed him as much as it changed Sarah. I've had celebrities on my stage, politicians, criminals, you name it. But the bravest person I've ever met was a woman who clutched a white envelope and decided to stop hiding. That's courage. That's real, transformative courage. Sarah went on to become a domestic violence advocate herself. She speaks at shelters, helps other survivors navigate the legal system, and works with organizations that provide resources to abuse victims. The business card Dr. Phil gave her? She still carries it in her wallet, though she's never needed to call it. Just knowing it's there has been enough. Linda and Sarah's relationship healed too. The secrets that had driven them apart. The worry, the frustration, the feeling of helplessness, dissolved once the truth came out. They speak every day now. Linda often volunteers at the same shelters where Sarah speaks. The lasting legacy of that episode isn't just one woman's rescue. It's a message to millions. You are not alone. Your shame is not your fault. Your silence is not required. There are people who will believe you, support you, and help you escape. Dr. Phil proved that day that sometimes the most powerful thing a person with a platform can do is stop everything and say, "You matter more than this show." That's not just good television. That's humanity at its finest. And that's why, 25 years and thousands of stories later, Dr. Phil still shows up every day. Because somewhere out there, there's another Sarah clutching another envelope, waiting for someone to tell her it's safe to finally speak the truth. The white envelope became a symbol in ways no one anticipated. Domestic violence organizations began using the white envelope as a metaphor in their outreach campaigns. "What's in your envelope?" became a way to ask survivors what truth they'd been carrying alone. Support groups would have members write their secrets on paper, seal them in white envelopes, and when ready, open them in a safe space. Dr. Phil's team received thousands of letters after the episode aired. Many included white envelopes with stories inside. Each one was read, and each person received resources and referrals to local support services. One letter stood out. It was from a 19-year-old college student named Emma who had been in an abusive relationship for 2 years. "I watched Sarah on your show," she wrote. "I saw myself in her. The next day, I went to campus police. You saved 2 lives that day, Sarah's and mine. Dr. Phil kept that letter next to Sarah's medical records in his office. The production team also changed after that day. They implemented new protocols for identifying potential abuse victims during pre-interviews. They trained staff to recognize warning signs. They built relationships with national crisis organizations so they could provide immediate, real support, not just television advice. That episode taught us something crucial. A senior producer later reflected. Sometimes the best television is when you stop making television and just help someone. Sarah's story also influenced Dr. Phil's approach to every subsequent show. He became even more direct, more willing to stop production if something didn't feel right, more insistent on connecting guests with real resources rather than just offering on-air advice. 5 years after that frozen moment in the studio, Sarah and Dr. Phil reunited for a special anniversary episode. She brought her mother Linda, now her closest confidant and co-advocate. But she also brought something else, a new white envelope. Dr. Phil looked at it with concern. "Sarah, what's this?" She smiled, a genuine, healed smile. "Open it." Inside was a photo. Sarah, Linda, and 15 other women standing together at a domestic violence shelter's grand opening. The shelter's name: the White Envelope House. "We built this with the donations that came in after my episode aired," Sarah explained. "It's a place where women can bring their truth, whatever it is, and know they'll be believed and supported. You started this, Dr. Phil. We just carried it forward." Dr. Phil stood there, holding that photo, and for once, he was the one who couldn't speak. The audience rose to their feet. The ovation lasted 3 full minutes. When it finally quieted, Dr. Phil looked at Sarah and said the only thing that mattered. "Thank you for trusting me with your truth. And thank you for using your pain to help others. That's the definition of courage." The white envelope that had trembled in Sarah's hands years ago had become a beacon of hope for thousands. And it all started with one man who decided that one woman's well-being mattered more than one television show. That's the Dr. Phil legacy. That's what 25 years of experience looks like when it meets raw human need. That's what happens when someone with power chooses compassion over entertainment. And somewhere right now, someone is holding their own white envelope, gathering the courage to open it, because they saw what happened when Sarah did.